Yeah.
Okay. We're holding again Pirkei Avos with Hillel is the middle of speaking. And it's Pirkei Avos, Perek Beis, Mishneh Ches. Hu haya oimer. Hillel, we're talking Hillel Hazaken, who was towards the end of the second Beis Hamikdash. He used to say like this: Marba basar, marba rima. The more flesh a person has, in other words, if you want to go on a physical sense, the heavier he is. So when he passes on, marba rima. So there's going to be end up having more worms eating his body, sounding very morbid, and I'll get into that in a second. He continues first things that are in excess. Marba nachasim, marba daga. The more possessions a person has, so then he worries. He worries simply for the possessions. Are they going to get stolen? Will the next investment be a good investment? Will I lose my wealth? So marba daga. So he has more worries. Marba noshim is marba kshafim. There was about 600 years ago, the Rebbeinu Gershom, we know this famous cherem, the Rebbeinu Gershom. Up to that point, in the Ashkenaz community, because in Sephardic communities, the Rebbeinu Gershom was in Ashkenaz, was in Germany, he instituted, because of a story that happened actually with him, that a man is not allowed to marry more than one wife. The Sephardim technically are not part of that cherem, and up to recently, they were marrying more than one wife. When the state of Israel was created in 48, a lot of Sephardim that came from Morocco and they came from different Sephardic lands, they actually came with more than one wife. And the law was that if you came and you were married before with more than one wife, you can basically stay with the wives. But in the future, it was not allowed. And why? Because Marbik Shafim. Now, Marbik Shafim is Kishuf. Kishuf is really it's witchcraft. It's witchcraft. Now, why is it? What does it have to do with women? Because then generally, witchcraft was attributed more to women than to any other gender. So it's gender to men. In fact, even in the United States, there's the famous Salem trials that happened a couple of hundred years ago in Salem, Massachusetts, and they were all women, and they were all accused of witchcraft, and they hung them. Marba shvachois, marba zima. The more a person has maidservants, so then there's more lewdness in the house, because the owner of the house be so comfortable, and there's so many shvachois around that he feels very comfortable with zima. Marba avodim is marba gozel. The more servants a person has, most likely there's going to be a lot of theft, because at the end of the day, they do things, they find things, the servants, and you really very have difficult times controlling them, because many times they're there alone and they take what they want. And in fact, I had an incident where I used to have a woman that worked for me who was from Czechoslovakia. And one day she shows me a beautiful picture of her family in Czechoslovakia, and her husband was wearing my tie. So there we see, and that was only one. So, but the more you have, the more theft you'll have. However, these were things that are negative. And now we're going to have the positives. Marba Torah, Marba Chaim. The more Torah a person has, the more life he has, and we'll get into that. Marba Yeshiva, Marba Chachma. The more a person studies, the wiser he becomes. He studies more, he knows more. Marba Eitza, Marba Tvuna. A person who constantly asks for advice, needs advice, wants advice, so he gets to understand more than he knew before, which means really like this. If a person, he is, like they say, Adam Korav lots. A person is related to himself, which means really that whenever he has something that pertains to him, he really thinks that he's mostly in the right, because a person is very, will always think the positive about himself. But if he asks advice, and the person from the outside looks at the whole picture, he'll give him advice, the real advice. So he'll understand later if something similar happens, that to look at it in a different way. And many times he will say, you know what, maybe I should rather have done this or do this, because last time I did it and I asked somebody and he was right, because he saw it from the, not without any self-interest. So therefore, Marba Eitzah, the more persons that gives Eitzahs, and also it also goes to the Rav. The more shilos the Rav has, the more he sees, because the truth is this: when somebody asks advice of a Rav of a certain personal situation, now the Rav doesn't really feel the pain. I mean, he'd like to feel, he gets involved, and some of them really almost feel the pain, but he can't feel the exact pain that that person is in when he comes to ask this advice. But when people come constantly and asking the Rav advice, so the Rav already starts to understand more the pain this person is going through, because he sees, I understand now that had I maybe done a little better with the advice with that other person, things would have been a little bit different. So he himself, Marba Eitzah, people ask him for Eitzahs, for advice, is Marba Tfuna, he's able to have a better understanding of most situations. Marba Tzedakah, Marba Shalom. Person who gives tzedakah. Many instances where I can personally attest to, where people have come and basically said, I have to say that the fact that I was able to get some money before Yontif, the household was relaxed, the household was comfortable. I remember I was in Eretz Yisrael a couple of years ago before Sukkot, and I get a call from somebody, and he tells me, my brother-in-law tells me, you want to do a chesed? I said, no, sure. You're in Eretz Yisrael. He says, do a chesed. Somebody called me up. He said, and he tells me that his wash machine broke. His wash machine broke. He needs a new wash machine. It can't be fixed. So I tell the fella, okay, I'm asking him to buy the wash machine. So I asked him how much it was, and it was probably 3 times as much as I thought it was going to be. It was like top of the line wash machine, which okay. So I said, okay, no problem. I said, but you know what? It's 1 o'clock. Yontif is 6 o'clock. I'll give it to him after Yontif. So my friend, my brother-in-law tells me, Zelig, don't do that. Give it to him now. And he told me something which really was really right. And this was part of what the Mishneh is saying. He says, he doesn't need the washing machine. His wife needs the washing machine. When his wife gets the washing machine before Yontif, she has the money in her hand. She's going to have a wonderful Yontif, and she's going to treat him much better as well. The Shalom Bayis is going to be so much better. When somebody gets money and he can't make a good Yontif, doesn't have enough money to make a good Yontif, when they sit down to that meal, so the wife has a little bit of less respect for her husband. Not that, she knows he not necessarily his fault, but you're supposed to be the provider. You didn't provide. The Shalom Bayis is definitely not the same. So in many times, Marba Tzedakah, Marba Shalom, this guy didn't need the washing machine. He wasn't buying it before Yontif. But she knew already that she had a washing machine that was right behind Yontif. She could buy a washing machine. It was a different Simchas Yontif, and he was 100% right. So I took a taxi and I went down there. So at the end of the day, and it turns out that I knew the fellow very well also. So it turns out that Marba Tzedakah, Marba Shalom in many different ways. And also Marba Tzedakah does not necessarily mean money. Tzedakah is time. Sometimes somebody needs an ear to listen to, and sometimes a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes somebody just needs somebody to speak to and to walk with, or to bring something, or to do something, to fix something in the house. That's tzedakah. You're doing something for somebody else. That's tzedakah. So there is Marba Shalom in the whole household. Now the Gemara finishes, which means really the Mishneh finishes. Kana Shem Tov Kana Liatzmai. A person who has he gained a very good reputation. He has a very good reputation. So he gained it for his own benefit. So we're saying really, when a person is judged by his reputation, if he has a good reputation, that means he's doing everything right. He's doing everything right. Of course, many times people don't know everything, but at the end of the day, whatever they do know, and it gave him a good reputation or gave her a good reputation, means obviously he has done things that deserved it. And if he deserves it, that means he's been doing things right. So the more he does, the more of a reputation he'll get. So that's also that part of this mission of Marbe. The more you add to yourself, all the things we just said before, the learning and the studying and the
and the tzedakah, all these cause for you to have a better reputation. And it's kana liatzmai, and this is something that you don't feel it, you don't see it. It's not something that you can sell, but it's something that your neshama has and it feels good. And therefore, kana lo divrei Torah, all this divrei Torah that we're learning now, and all the divrei Torah that all the benefits of divrei Torah. It's kind of like Chaya Olam Haba. Every minute that you learn Torah, you're increasing exponentially your Chaya Olam Haba. It's not even fathomable the amount of schar you get for every second of learning Torah. So therefore, this is part of the half of the Mishnah of the Marba. The more you add of that, the more you gain for yourself more in the Olam Haba, and this is obviously a major benefit. So we see like this: the Mishnah is divided. Hill divides the Mishnah into two sections. The first section, of course, is excess of the physical nature. He says like this: a human being is like an animal. An animal, a lion. A lion is hungry, so it goes and it stalks and kills the prey, and eats them up. But that's the nature of the beast. It's absolutely 100% allowed. However, you'll never see a wild lion, a lion in the wild, not in a circus or in a zoo, that's fat. Never. Because he only eats what he needs. And that's the healthiest way to go. The Rambam has pages upon pages of how a person should eat and what he should eat. And the worst thing he said is excess. In fact, he says a person should leave the table when he's 2/3 full. He should leave a third of his, so to speak, stomach. If you can figure it out, then he'll stay healthy. The thing that's the least healthy, that the biggest thing that makes somebody unwell is actually an excess of food. Excess in the physical sense is never good in any realm. And that's what the Hill is saying. On the other hand, spiritually, a person, the whole point, he wants to feed his neshama here. When you're feeding your neshama, we always have that term, as I said many times, aliyas neshama. The neshama wants to get always closer to Hashem. Now, Hashem is infinite, which means it's not physically possible to sate yourself, to fill yourself up with Kedusha. Because as much as you fill yourself up with, Moshe Rabbeinu himself, Aaron HaKohen, they all were such great tzaddikim, but they still had infinite amount of Kedusha they could have put on top of themselves to get closer to Hashem, because Hashem is endless here. You can't fathom the amount of Kedusha that Hashem has. So therefore we have to strive to get more and more Kedusha. Now, when we said before, Marbe Tzedakah, Marbe Shalom, this is the week, this parsha, we talk about the Petira of Aaron HaKohen. This is in Parshas Chukas. The Torah says when Aaron HaKohen passed away, all of Klal Yisrael cried. Because we all know he was Marbe Shalom. His fundamental being, besides being the Kohen Gadol, was tzedakah. Whatever he can help somebody else. And the Shalom bias that he created was immense. And of course, there was after he passed away, I think there was 80,000 boys that were named after him, because the Klal Yisrael missed him so that they wanted their children to have, at least they say when you name a baby after somebody, the benefits are that some of the things that the person up there brings down and gives to that baby some of the good attributes. That's why you should name somebody after somebody good, because chas v'shalom not, then not such good attributes, and people then add another name if they feel they have to name after somebody. There was a story that I saw about this fellow, a very interesting story, that there are people in every single shul that will go around and quieting people down, shushing people not to speak. And those people have a hard time. And then now there's a whole movement, so to speak, to stop speaking. So people won't take it as badly. But many, many times you'll find that one person who's a yeshiva bacher, not a yeshiva bacher, but a younger man or somebody's a serious person. And you know what? When you look at him, you'll say maybe he's like quote, the geek of the Beis Medrash. He's the annoying one in the Beis Medrash because I'm in the middle of a good conversation and you're stopping me. But there's so what you do many times the guy gets, like they say, harpers and vicious. People always say, well, who are you? You I remember when you used to be still a speaker. All of a sudden you're the big tzaddik. Things like that. Things come up always like that. So there was this fellow, he was a boy, he was 26 actually, and Yerushalayim. And he was the shusher, so to speak, not being single yet. And telling an older man to be quiet was a thing that was didn't make, was a little difficult to fathom for these. They couldn't swallow it. But in any case, there was another fellow in the shul that he went over to. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. He wasn't the shusher. There was another fellow in the shul that was a shusher, but he was a younger man, and people used to constantly berate him. So this guy who was 26 years old, and he felt he needed a schus to get married. So, and then, it's really young, but Yerushalayim for Yerushalmi, this is considered an alta bucha, So he went over to this fella and he told him, listen to me, you get harpe and bisha. People embarrass you and you never answer. He says, that's a tremendous schus. He says, the next time that happens, I want you to give me that schus because I need to get married. And I'm hoping that along with that schus of you doing whatever you're doing and you're giving it to me, Hashem will look at me favorably and let me get married and find my basharta. And he agreed. He was a good guy. About 2 weeks later, he was davening and it was becoming before Chazar Shatz, and he needed to change his siddur. There was something wrong with it. He went to the back to change his siddur, and there were two people who were from the wealthy people of the shul, and they were having a good conversation. They were talking about things that didn't belong in shul. And it was about business, about Shabbos. So he went over to them and he said, no, he takes the siddur and he shows that they're holding Chazar Shatz. And the guy starts, who are you to tell me what to do? Go back to your seat. I'm in the back of the shul, leave me alone. So what happened was, just at that point, the Shliach Tzibur got to Kedusha, and the fella did something that was pretty gutsy. He went and he stood between the two speakers. They shouldn't continue speaking. And he started saying Kedusha out loud, that they should start saying Kedusha, they should get involved in the davening. And he meant it ernst. But he figured it's maybe the only way to get them to stop. Now, one of them they both didn't feel that great about it, but one of them took it to a certain step that he went a little bit overboard. And what he did was, he took the guy's talus, and ripped it off him, and he threw it away to the other side of to the side of the shul. Now, in middle of Kedusha, the guy couldn't go get it because you have to stay in one place. So a whole Kedusha he was saying without a talus, which was even much more embarrassing, and the shul saw that. And he didn't say anything. After Kedusha, he took his talus, he sat down, and he went to continue davening. And in his mind, when he continued davening, he said, this chus should go to that boy, he should get engaged. And that was it. Now, the fellow who took the talus and threw it away, throughout Shabbos was thinking about it. And he felt, I crossed the line. I mean, he really wanted us to stop davening. And nobody wants to do an Aver, but usually they have a charata later. But it was the spur of the moment. And who's this young guy to tell me what to do? But he really he felt bad. So Matzah Shabbos, he went and he called up this fella. And he said, I really want to apologize to you. I knew I stepped over the line. I should have done it. I stepped over the line. And please be me, Michael. She says, I'll tell you the truth. I would be you, Michael. And I have no problem. Don't take these things so seriously. But I'll tell you what happened. Somebody asked me to give him the schus. And in my mind, I gave him the schus of this particular time. He says, and you have to call him up because I don't know this schus anymore. So if you want to mechila, go call the fellow up. So the guy says, okay, give me his number. He calls up this bacher, this usher, his name was. And he says, I spoke to so-and-so, and he told me the story that he gave you the schus. There was something that I did that was really not nice to him. And he didn't answer me. And he said that for that schus, you should get engaged. He says, but I'll tell you the truth. I know you have a schus, but I want a mechila because I really did something wrong. So the guy's thinking, now if I'm Michael, this fella, really what's going to happen really is I'm giving him back my schus in a way. But then, of course, being Michael somebody is a big, tremendous thing as well. So he says, you know what, I'll tell you the truth. He says, I'll be your moichel on one condition. He says, what's the condition? The condition is that I want you to do something special to have a takana. In other words, if you know of a schus that you could get for doing something, a mitzvah, that schus, then at that, if you do something that you wouldn't normally do, then I will be your moichel. So he was really being really special, even very special, this bacher as well, because he figured he'll accomplish even double over here. I'm going to be a moichel, but there'll be another schus coming out of this. And sure enough, the guy says, I'm asking. A couple of weeks later, this guy, the guy who embarrassed the fella, was davening in another shul. And he happened to notice in that other shul, there was a guy that shushes everybody. And he shushed two people, and they yelled at him. And the guy didn't answer. And he was an older man, actually, the guy who shushed two people. And he was a little bit more, a little middle-aged. And he says, and he didn't answer those guys that he shushed. And he went back to his seat. And the guys that he shushed were younger than him. And it was really also an embarrassment. But he didn't answer, went back to his seat, and he said, I did mine, basically. And this guy's watching this happen. So he decides, he goes up to him after davening, he says, I want to talk to you. He says, can I come to your home and speak to you for a minute? Give me just a couple of minutes of your time. So he says, sure. And I think to myself, I'm going to try to get a schus out of this guy, so then my mechila will kick in, so to speak, from the other guy. And he goes to the guy's house, and he sees he doesn't live so comfortably. He tells him, what do you do? And he says, I'm a lamed, I'm a rebbe. And what can I do for you? She said, I'll tell you the truth. I'd like to help you out. For some reason, I'm pretty successful, and I'd like to help you out. Is there anything I can give you? Anything I can do for you? So the guy says, I don't need anything. He's to me, Mr. Ketidi Rishama Yidin, who's a Malamed. I don't need. So he says, but I'm sure there's something that you may need or anything like that. Please let me help you out. I'm very impressed with you. I think what I watched, what you did over there, it was very impressive. And I'd like to feel like I want to be almost like a little partner with you. So he says, I'll tell you the truth. The only thing that I have at the moment, which is actually pretty serious, but I don't know how much you can help me. My daughter's engaged, is very close to a shidduch. And the problem is, in those days, 20 years ago at least, in Eretz Yisrael, you couldn't do a shidduch unless you had an apartment. There were no rentals. In those days, you had to buy a small apartment for a young couple. You used to buy it a little bit out of the way. It was a lousy apartment, but it was a startup apartment for these people who were just sitting learning, but you had to own it. But they were never so cheap. But you had to buy an apartment. So you were buying like a house for every one of your children. That's why you had years back. It started the trend. People used to come to America to collect for Achnasas Kala. The Achnasas Kala was to buy an apartment over there. So I remember people used to say, I don't own a house, and he wants to buy an apartment. Why is he coming over here? But we're helping people. So that's part of my tzedakah. Even if you don't have, doesn't mean you have to stop somebody else from having. He's not asking you to buy the house. I'm asking you, give me $2 to every penny counts. So the guy says, how much is the apartment that you think you would need? She says, imagine there's $40,000. So the guy says, $40,000. He says, yeah. She says, okay, but listen, if you want to give me a couple of $100 towards it, I'll accept it. So the guy says, okay. He takes out a checkbook and he writes out a check for $40,000 and he hands it to him. Now this guy's jaw drops. He says, what are you doing? He said, I don't even know you. He said, let me tell you something, Baruch Hashem, I'm successful. I'm impressed with you. I want you to accept this check. He says, but this is not normal. He says, I know, but take it. So, and he says, stands up and wants to walk out of the house. The guy says, here, you still have an opportunity to take back the check. I feel uncomfortable. He says, don't feel uncomfortable. You're doing me a chesed by taking this check. And sure enough, he does. He takes the check. And now this is unbelievable. Now this guy was so important to him, this fella, because he really knew he overstepped his bounds, that he was willing to shell out a check of $40,000 to get a mechila, to get somebody to be meichelim for an avera. Unbelievable story. But you would think the story should end there. It would be a great story, but no, it doesn't end there. 2 days later, the guy calls him up and he says, I want you to know your check was the cause of this shidduch happening. Because I wouldn't have been able to, we wouldn't have known what to do with the young couple. And I didn't want to promise something that I couldn't deliver. So I didn't know what to do. And it happens to be, I got a wonderful boy and I was looking forward to the shidduch, and it only happened because of your check. And I had my eye on this point, for whatever the reason, I just couldn't commit to do anything. And sure enough, the shidduch happened. It's a wonderful story. A day later, this guy gets a call, and he says, I want you to know, I was you, Michael, and I felt very, very good about it. And I want you to know, maybe because I was you, Michael, that's why 2 days ago I became engaged. Mazel tov. I'm so happy. He said, who's your cousin? Who's the kala? And turns out that this $40,000 bought his apartment. The shidduch happened. This usher married the daughter of this guy, the other shusher of the other base madish. And this is the when you marbet tzedakah, you marbet shalom, that made everybody happy. Everybody is wonderful. So the should help. Should understand that the more you give when it comes to kedusha, the more you're accomplishing for yourself. This man, for the rest of his life, and he didn't tell him, by the way, at the end, it was his $40,000. He didn't know the other half. So at the end of the day, but for the rest of his life, he knows what he did, and there is a certain satisfaction the person has when he was able to accomplish something so good. So Mi'ez Hashem, we should learn from this, and we should take a look to see to accomplish marba. Always, you should continue to give excess and excess and excess when it comes to kedusha. Thank you very much. Have a very good day.